Hey everyone, and welcome to our Dubai Fitness Championship preview. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil, joined by Joey Adduci. It's the last 2 days that we had some fun little podium picks, gave people a taste of who we can expect to be standing in 1, 2, 3, and even some dark horses. But Joey, I know there are a ton of different athletes that you've been researching, getting excited for. But first of all, this is the 10th year of this competition. Is there anything that you expect to see? Because I have a feeling that they're gonna like go out with a bang, whether it's the programming or some fun like things that we have in store.
Yeah, I mean, notoriously, we see kind of a mini games. I wouldn't say mini because the volume's pretty gnarly typically, but it'd be interesting to see if they get them back in the water. The desert run is something that all the athletes that were there really talk about a lot. I'm really interested to see if they're going to continue the strongman trend that we've seen kind of
Oh
replace
yeah.
the barbell this year. So that's kind of the biggest question mark for me is on the strength event. Will we see a barbell or will we see an odd object?
What would you rather see?
Personally, I'd like to see the odd objects mixed into workouts a little bit more and then see the barbell just because the athletes do spend so much time and there's such beauty to the technique. So I'm a little bit biased to seeing a little bit more weightlifting.
When it comes to some of those, like, interesting elements, like last year we saw them kind of in that ski resort running up that hill, that's almost something that I would have expected to see for a 10-year reunion, but are there any other type of elements like that that you could see brought back, or maybe they are bringing that back or something else?
It depends. I think that the biggest thing is really them looking back at kind of what are the historical things. When you look at the movies that have people from the games talking about planning for those big anniversaries, they always kind of reflect back on like what are the things that people really talk about and remember. And I could see the
Mm.
Dubai team kind of doing something similar where it's saying, hey, these are the things that really kind of stirred up some noise for us. Let's do a new spin on it and make it really fun for these athletes.
And the athletes, it seems like we have full rosters, at least up until this point. We hope that there's no more changes. But let's start with some of the guys that you're going to be keeping your eye on outside of the podium.
Yeah, for sure. And I apologize ahead of time if I mess up anybody's names. I will do my best. My first one is going to be Guillaume Bryant. Finished 26th at this past year's games. Looking at the performances, an 11th in rinse and repeat and a 14th in Jackie Pro. So just kind of breaking that down, that there's a lot of work capacity there across the board. Some swimming skill there. So if we do get them back in the water, that is something that we'll be able to see. And then just, Jackie's a classic benchmark. So, classic CrossFit is going to be seen at Dubai. So that's going to be good for him for sure.
Mm. Who else are you keeping your eye on the men's
Um,
side?
second
Then we'll
one
head
would
to the women.
Yeah, second one would be Georgios Karavas. This is somebody who finished first at the French Throwdown, finished 37th at the games this past year. If you look at his track record, he is a powerful athlete, finishing 17th in hat trick, which is that wall ball dumbbell kind of work to rest sprint interval that they had. And then back in 2021, he was there, finished 33rd, and he finished his best events were the 550-yard sprint and then also the bike snatch sprint with the power snatches, the barbell. He had a 12th and 14th place there. So his bias does seem to be in that more powerful short time domain type of thing, which we have seen come up at Dubai. The question is if those long endurance events do come up, how he'll be able to kind of show his training filling those holes for him. But definitely a great athlete. Excited to see him in some of those shorter events. Um, Kind of fast forward a little bit, I have Moritz Feierberg. I apologize again about the names. This is somebody a little bit on the opposite side of the spectrum. He took first in the German throwdown this year, and then also a 36th at the 2022 games. His best finish was a ninth place in bike to work. So for him, that's kind of going to be if we can get outside, maybe we will see a bike, but if we have a long run, something more in that long time domain, more endurance, outside the gym type of stuff, we could really see him step up and kind of stir some noise there as well. Definitely excited to see him for sure.
Mm.
And then the last one to kind of dive into is Luka Jucic. We're talking a lot about Lazar, but his brother is somebody that, is an amazing athlete. And, he finished the last chance qualifier. His best finish was actually 10th in the 2K row. So that's something that, he has an amazing engine to be able to finish 10th in that. And then back in 2021, he finished sixth in the 550-yard sprint. So really what that kind of tells you, if you take a step back, is that those single modality events are kind of where his wheelhouse is when we're not going back and forth between different modalities. He can kind of just put it together. We'll see if he's kind of built a little bit more well-roundedness in those mixed modal events, and that'll definitely be fun to see. Other notables would be Anioli Ekai, Fabian Benito Celis, Alex Putolis, and also Victor Hofer, who is a young 19-year-old coming off a fifth place finish at the German Throwdown. So definitely a group of people that, the general population is going to get to know after this weekend. And you might see some breakout athletes on the men's side for sure.
Going back to talking about Luca, and recently he's been training a lot with his brother Lazar. Lazar, somebody that we predict to be somewhere on the podium. How do you think that the combination of the two of them training together might actually help Luca get closer or potentially on the podium?
Yeah, that's a great point. So, what if you look at Lazar, he is like not a home run hitter yet, but he is not bad at anything. He's so well rounded. And if you look at a lot of Mayhem athletes, their training is extremely well rounded. So, Luca kind of diving into that classic CrossFit, filling all of those different holes, that's something that he needs because we already know he can hit home runs if it comes to those single modality monostructural events. So for someone like him, it's probably the best thing he can do. What you have to think about is really kind of the emotional side of training with your brother. How is that going to work? I know they're like best friends though, so it's definitely
Yeah.
something that could be really great for the both of them.
They always wanna go 1 and 2. They don't care who's in 1st and who's in 2nd, but that's the goal.
Got to be
Looking
fun.
at Right, it's gotta be fun training with your brother like that. But looking at some of these other, maybe lesser known athletes to the public, why is this competition specifically, competing at Dubai, doing the online qualifier and getting there? Why do you think that, this is the competition that's important for them to almost, like, have their breakout to maybe the 2023 season? Meal prepping is a huge part of my routine and lifestyle, but one of the biggest headaches for me is going to the grocery store and trying to find high quality meat that I can trust. That's why I recently turned to Butcher Box. There's a ton of different options when it comes to deciding what's in the box, from 100% grass-fed beef to free-range organic chicken, pork raised crate free, and even wild caught seafood. They make it convenient to get all that protein in without the headache of the supermarket. For me, I went with the customized box so I could pick exactly what I like to eat, or more in my case, what I know how to cook. But if you're feeling like getting more comfortable in the kitchen, they have recipe inspos to bring your very basic cooking skills, like myself, to chef level brilliance. Tacos are a staple for me, and Butcher Box helps keep them fresh and high quality no matter which box I choose. Use code CHALKUP to get a discount on your box so you can hurry up and get cooking. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that it's a well-rounded event typically. So it's really easy if somebody performs well at Rogue to be like, well, it's a strength biased event. Or if somebody does well at Wadapalooza has a swim event and some endurance, but it's typically very open-esque in the combination of movement patterns we see. So it's very good for people who are good in the gym. Dubai is kind of that games athletic kind of thing that gets people outside of the gym and showcases their ability to adapt on the fly. So if you can perform well at Dubai, it's just one of those things that it kind of forecasts, hey, this person has the ability if they get to the games. That's the hardest part for these people is getting there, but they could get there and then eventually stir some noise when they get to the games because we've seen that performance at Dubai.
Do you think this is a competition that will see a new movement this year? And if so, what do you think it is?
Possibly. It's difficult to say. In terms of new movements, the biggest thing is that like these movements are all around. It's really just the variation. So it's will we see that new variation of a movement that, we had the A jumps and the different plyometric
Yeah.
push-ups at Dubai. And those things wreck athletes because you're going to fail at the margins of your experience. So if you don't have exposure practicing those things, that's where people struggle. And we saw that this past year at the games with the strongman elements. So I would love to see some sort of new twists on some foundational movements just to see the athletes that can adapt on the fly.
Cool. I'm excited to see. We don't know the programming yet, but we will know hopefully soon.
Yes, very excited for the programming.
Let's transition now into some of the women that you're thinking about outside of the podium that, people should be looking at.
All right, so number one is going to be Zahir Kaya out of Turkey. So looking at her track record, finishing 29th at the games, fifth place in shuttle to overhead in the run portion, a 13th in the capital, which most games athletes said that's one of the worst workouts they've ever done, and then 11th in the alpaca event. So if we look at the kind of common thread here, it is running and grunt work. So she is somebody that can just put her head down and work and finish, amongst the top at the biggest stage. So she's somebody I'm excited to see because we can see those kind of grunt work workouts like we were talking about with new movements, those long chippers. If we get out in the desert and go for a run, this is somebody I really think could kind of surprise people. Definitely an exciting athlete to watch.
Mm.
Moving on, the next one, kind of polar opposite side of the spectrum, is Manon and Yonis. Um, coming off most recently finishing 11th at the Rogue Invitational. She had a second place in event 8, which was the main roadblock of the weekend for a lot of people. That was the dumbbell snatch strict handstand push up with the deficit event. And then also a third in event 9, which was the ring muscle up run and goblet squat workout. So if you look at her kind of strengths, it's really in the gymnastic side of things. She's really showed a wide array of capacity in terms of time domain, but there always seems to be that common thread of high skill, high strength gymnastics for sure. Um, and then going into the next one, this is somebody who broke out last year is Freya Moosberger. That is somebody
Mhm.
that, everybody originally got to know her because she's trained under the same training camp as Patrick Vellner. So we saw her
Yep.
in Pat's kind of vlogs along the season. But then she had that amazing 14th place in the sandbag ladder where she was inching that bag up her chest, just kind of working her way, finishing in 14th place. And then she also took a 17th place in the rinse and repeat workout. So you do see a little bit of balance in terms of capacity. That was a high engine type of workout with the rinse and repeat. So she is definitely somebody that if we can get in the water, if we do see the continuation of the strongman events instead of the barbell, she might be able to kind of sneak in a bunch of points that may not be happening if it's just a classic lift as well. And then I guess the next one would be Andrea Solberg. So Andrea also competed at Rogue back in October, taking 20th place. And she also finished extremely well in the dumbbell snatch handstand push-up event. She finished 8th place there and also took a 10th place in the trail run. So we see, again, opposite sides of the spectrum there in terms of we have high skill, high strength, and then we have long endurance. So that's somebody to kind of, raise your eyebrow at and say, okay, this person has a wide array of capacities there. That kind of fits the Dubai mold of we might get outside, go for a long run, but we get those events that a lot of the top athletes might struggle with if there's like a high skill movement like strict handstand push-ups. Back in 2020, Andrea finished ninth in Dam Diane in the virtual competition. So we know that strict handstand push-ups are a wheelhouse workout. And if they come up for her at Dubai, she could definitely, possibly win, definitely finish top 5 in an event like that. So definitely someone to watch if strict handstand push-ups come up. Moving on to Taylor Howe. Um, Taylor is another person that when we think about her, we should be thinking about power. And you can see that third picture on the right.
Yeah.
That's her, back in 2018, she competed in the Commonwealth Games and finished 6th. So if weightlifting comes up and we don't go to the strong men, she is going to be somebody to look out for. Looking back at this past year, though, I know 2018 is a while ago, she finished 11th in the last chance qualifier. So she didn't make it to the games, but she was definitely in the fight. She took second overall in the 2K row event of the last chance qualifier, and she took 10th place overall in a thruster bar muscle up interval workout. So anything that comes up that's really powerful based, she's somebody to look for to finish in that top of the heat. She's extremely strong, extremely powerful, and she could definitely be dangerous if the right events kind of line up for her. Go ahead.
It's interesting because as we go through some of these athletes, especially the athletes that we're thinking might be outside of the podium, a lot of the same names keep coming up that we've seen recently compete at Rogue, some other European competitions like Madrid. But then you look at the maybe like top 10 at the CrossFit Games besides a couple athletes like we obviously know Fikowski just did Elfit. He's also doing Dubai. But I would say the majority of like the top end athletes, they are almost deciding not to do these off-season competitions. But why do you think it's actually important for some of these athletes that we're seeing do multiple off-season competitions?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it comes down to where they are in their career. So a lot of those people you're talking about in the top 10, those are people that are getting experience at the largest stage. They're going against the best of the best. They're getting tested on the grandest scale. So that's the advantage. They're really just collecting data of, how do I kind of need to tweak my training in the upcoming year so I can make sure I'm moving in the right direction as a competitor. The problem is that when those people show up, a lot of these unknowns don't really get the opportunity to measure up, and they aren't being able to do it on a scale with programming and everything on that. So this allows those people to then get involved in a competition that has a broader test. A lot of these virtual tests are gym specific, so people are really good at thrusters, overhead squats, the movements we see in the open. But taking that next step involves that athleticism that really requires competitive experience. So getting involved in these competitions is huge for them if they want to take that next step and get to the games.
With, like, those athletes who maybe are trying to break into the games or maybe they're, like, a bubble athlete, is there a sweet spot for how many off-season competitions they should be doing in person, versus, like, pushing that threshold and maybe, like, overexerting themselves for the season?
Oh man, that's really hard to say. It's going to be so individual. It's so specific to them. It's, what can they recover from? What does their schedule allow? What is their resources and financial situation look like to attend those events? A lot of it's going to be dictated on that. And then again, if they are somebody that looks objectively at their past performances, is a lot of these off-season events are trying to be well-rounded. But if you look at the CrossFit Games season, the Open is really focused on that work capacity classic CrossFit. And then if you look at the quarterfinals, it's kind of an extension of the Open. It's kind of like the RX plus of the Open.
Yeah.
Once you get to semifinals, semifinals is pretty clear. If you look at kind of the programming, it's pretty clear what you need to be good at. So it's really kind of setting up your training to set you up for success when you get to those stages. And the problem with attending these off-season events is you're giving up a lot of time working on your weaknesses for that final stage. That's kind of the roadblock before you get to the games. You know what I mean?
Mhm. But are you saying that maybe for some of these athletes who haven't broken into the CrossFit Games, or maybe they went 1 year and then are trying to make it back, that it might be, worth that risk to do more of these off-season competitions?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different variables involved. So you have to think of like exposure equals the ability to get more sponsors, more support. That's something that's really important for professionalism within the sport. But then
Mhm.
also, like I said, in terms of being an athlete for that season, how how much is too much in terms that it's taking away from the macro cycle between now and the CrossFit Games. If they're thinking they're a games athlete, their training should be laid out in a way that says, I'm going to the games. It shouldn't be like, I hope I get to the games. It's no, this is what the year looks like. These are the weaknesses from last year. And this is what the season looks like. And that will allow you to kind of plug in the events around the training rather than attending the events and then trying to adapt the training to the events. So it's a little bit more of a proactive approach. I think that might be a little bit more successful while still letting them get the exposure and the experience of the competition.
Hmm. Well, I'm excited to see this competition go down. The 10th year, we have a full stacked field of athletes and another opportunity to get to know more of these athletes that maybe we don't get to know from some of the other competitions that we've seen so far.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I hope you have a safe flight. Jealous you'll be on the floor. Have a great time.
Thanks, Joey. We'll see you on the other side. You'll be in the States, we'll be in Dubai. Regardless, we're going to have all the coverage. Make sure you check out morningchalkup.com and also our YouTube channel because we will have a full spread of interviews, recap shows, little behind the scenes things. It's going to be a fun time. Thanks for joining us, Joey.